Yes, you're live.
Okay, welcome everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. In keeping with the national character counts philosophy, the Boone Community School Board promotes and models the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. In conducting this meeting, we expect that all participants will act in a manner consistent with these principles. Mr. Lewis, could we have roll call vote?
Mr. Lewis?
Weber.
Here.
Nystrom.
Here.
Teben.
Here.
Pritchard.
Here.
Melhouse.
Here. Okay, recognition of visitors. I don't have anything on this section of the agenda. Someone needs to turn off their, okay. Thank you, whoever it was that muted, so. Let's move on. Dr. Bernard, anything on recognition of visitors that's not on here?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. Consideration of the agenda, Dr. Bernard, Mr. Lewis, are there any changes, additions to the agenda?
I have no changes or additions.
Nope.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as printed?
Move to approve agenda as printed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Pritchard, seconded by Mrs. Teben to approve the agenda as printed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next, hearing from delegations. Bog, is there anyone on here that wants to talk that you're aware of? Nope. Mr. Lewis, you kind of watch the
I have nothing.
chat box. Do you have nothing either?
Yep,
Sounds
nothing.
good to me. Then we're going to move on to the routine business. I'll entertain a motion to approve the routine business.
Move to approve routine business as printed.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Pritchard, seconded by Dr. Nystrom to approve the routine consent agenda as printed. Is there any discussion or anything that any board member would like to pull out or has any questions for Dr. Menard at this time?
Yeah, I sent an email last week, and I'm sorry I couldn't hear what was just going on. My phone was acting funny on me, so I'll just kind of throw this out here now. I want to make sure at some point we discuss the email that we received as a board last week. I want to make sure that we're discussing equity training and for our teachers and our associates and all of our staff. And I want to make sure that we're doing some sort of inclusivity teachings in the classrooms. And I know a lot of that is like throwing a lot at our admins tonight.
Okay.
So maybe just a future board item. I really want to make sure that that's part of it. I'd like a report of what equity training has been done, what is going to be done, and same with inclusivity.
Okay, I think what I'm going to do right now is we're going to add that to next month's agenda. And so the administration give us some time to get a report back because that really does not fall into the consent agenda. And it's really a little bit late to add that to the regular agenda. So without the principals having time and the administration. So I would ask the administration to put that on the agenda for our next meeting, which will be July, I don't have the date.
July 8th.
July 8th?
No,
No. It'll be
13th. Sorry.
13th. Okay, that sounds right. July 13th. So I think it's good topics, Joy, but we just need to have that in the proper time and then have the administration have time to discuss this issue fully.
I I completely agree. And that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. Just like, I know that takes time to think through and process. And as a board member, I'm willing to do what I can to come alongside and discuss those things as well too. So yeah, just want to throw that out there and we can move on then.
Okay, any other?
Yeah, Dr. Milhouse.
Yeah.
Reading the return to learn plan, that it's touched on. Those things are touched on in that plan.
Are they? Okay, well, we can just,
Your
we can
behavior,
perhaps-
et cetera. Yeah,
we can discuss some of it then when we get to the return, when
Yeah,
we
it
get to
does
the
more.
return to learning. So let's finish off the consent agenda first, and then we'll bring this back up when we're talking about the return to learning. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of approving the consent agenda as printed, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Next is the return to learn plan. Dr. Menard, I'm gonna let you start with this one. It's a pretty complex issue.
Yeah, it is. We've done a good, we've done a good job of kind of coordinating how to get the plan done. And I think it's coming together nicely, at least at this point. There's a lot of work yet to be done. We had continuous learning consultation meetings the last 2 weeks of May in the areas that we're working on the return to learn plan. And that includes infrastructure, health and safety, Iowa academic standards, social, emotional behavior and health, equity and special education. And all of those groups gave us lots of good ideas, lots of good direction and the types of things that need to go into the plan. We've put some on this plan. This plan is not due to the Department of Education till June 30th. So there's a lot of work to be done on it yet. What you're seeing now is not even the completed draft, but the work of the continuous learning consulting committees that they have given us. And then a few people have been able to work on the guidelines and putting those together. But we're going to have another meeting later in June to approve the plan so that we can submit it to the Department of Education by June 30th. The plan that you're seeing now is on-site and off-site education, or essentially what we've been doing for the last couple of months and what we did prior to that in our traditional learning environment. The other aspect of this plan that will be developed after July 1 is the hybrid draft plan, and that's going to include how we respond if we can only have so many kids in the building at a time, or so many children in a classroom, or if we have large groups of students who, because of health reasons or health concerns, aren't able to attend school, or staff, for that matter, that may have those issues. That takes on a little broader perspective, and one that we right now have no idea what it's going to look like in August. So we're hoping everybody around the country is working on these types of plans. We're hoping to get some good ideas and good support in how to put that part of the plan together in July. So that's done for the start of school in August. So our timeline is we completed the continuous learning consultation meetings on by the end of May. This is the draft report coming to the board. After this, we need to take it to a lead learning team, and that's about 25 variety of staff members. We hope to do that by June 15th. We hope to have the on-site and off-site plan for return to learn finalized by June 17th to get it to the board, and hopefully have a board meeting, short one, to review the return to learn plan either June 22nd, or if that's not possible, June 29th. Because we will have to submit this plan to the Department of Education on June 30th. And then we move into July and work through July on the hybrid plan and get that approved at the August 10th board meeting. I will tell you too that as this is developing, each week the Department of Education has webinars to help guide us in this process. And as with us, with them, things seem to change weekly. So that as they learn more, they're giving us additional guidance. And I know that there will, as we look at those things between now and the end of June, there'll be some areas we'll have to add to this plan. But we'll be working on it throughout the month. Excuse me. And hopefully be able to get it approved by June 22nd so we can forward it to the Department of Education. There's a lot of stuff on the plan, so I guess I'd ask if there are questions or thoughts as you've had a chance to look at it over the last few days.
I'll open it for discussion. Dr.
Well,
Nystrom?
Brad, there are a lot of places where it says that you're going to follow the CDC or the state guidelines. And I know that facilitates getting that plan done. But do you have to delineate those before it goes in?
No, what will go to the state is actually, we'll probably link this plan so they have it. But in reality, as all the state is going to do, the Department of Education is look at several assurances that we have set are in the plan. So things like the CDC requirements will not have to be submitted to the Department of Ed.
The problem
Okay.
there is, the other problem there is some of the CDC recommendations change. So we don't want to get
Right.
too specific, because if we do, they're going to change, then we got to change. I think just saying CDC guidance is probably going to be better in those regards. It's a moving target.
And I will
Yeah.
tell you, Pam, just to clarify that a little bit more, we had to have a continuous learning plan together back the end of March when school closed, and we had to put it together fairly quickly. To submit that to the Department of Education, we submitted a one-page summary, and we checked off on several assurances that we did have in the plan. It took me about 2 minutes to fill it out, and I got it back in about 10 minutes as approved. So they're really more concerned about the assurances, leaving the specifics to the local district.
Yeah. I guess I had a personal concern today about what we were following. My granddaughter and her driving partner sent me a picture. They had their first day of driver's ed today, and they both had their masks on, and it was real cute. And then when she got done, I said, well, did your teacher wear a mask too? Well, being 14, she really didn't know, and she drug her feet, and that told me no, probably not. So I think in that case, maybe we need to clarify stuff like that to our staff. If that's in the CDC guidelines or if that's in the state guidelines right now, go for it. Because I got my chart out, and all it says about driver's ed is virtually. So, that was confusing to me. It might be confusing to other people.
And unfortunately, we do not, that's a separate company that does the driver education component. Some of them are our teachers, full-time teachers that are doing it on the side for extra pay.
Yeah,
And some of the other teachers are not teachers. I know a retired law enforcement officer that is an instructor too. So
I wasn't sure who taught that company. Okay.
The virtual part is the state approved the classroom part to be virtual. So right now, all of the classrooms across the state are doing virtual, where they usually do those in person. I'm seeing, most of as it is a private company, but as I've seen, I don't know if it's mandatory or optional, but up at the school, I'm seeing all the driver's ed teachers coming in and out. Most of the time, I've seen them all wearing masks most of the time. So
I would hope that they would, because
Yeah.
that's a pretty close group there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Bernard,
I haven't seen any not up to this point, but
Dr. Bernard, I was just going to add, we were pretty specific in our wording, and I had the infrastructure part along with Drake Bailey, and we put in that we would follow the CDC requirements rather than the recommendations, because we felt like as a district, we would have to decide on recommendations which we would follow, but requirements are a different story. So that if there were requirements that came out, we would have to follow those. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I know, I mean, I don't know if it's not a requirement by the CDC, I don't believe, to wear masks. So if we're saying that as a district, then I don't know if we are or if we aren't, but we were specific in our wording in what we put in there.
Yep.
So Scott, back to driver's ed, is that called Drive Tech?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And, you know, one of the other things that I would add being a driver's ed teacher is that, you know, one of the things, and, you know, I did it for, I don't know, 12, 13 years, but it's hard with a mask. One of the things I do as an instructor when you're driving is you're watching for the facial cues of the kids and what they're looking at and what their expressions are to see if they're paying attention. And so there's also a little, I'd almost say there's a little danger in that, having people have masks on in some of those situations as you're watching for some pretty, you know, tight places. But like I said, up to this point, I have seen most of them wearing masks.
Okay.
I think one other suggestion I would have for the driver's ed instructors would be to keep the windows rolled down as much as possible. I know it might be a little bit warm, but if you got the windows rolled down, you're going to get that air circulating fast enough that it's not going to be nearly as big of a problem, especially when they're driving in town. Out in the country, it's a little bit tougher because of the speed, but when they're driving 25, 35 miles an hour around town,
Yeah,
windows
that
down
was
would
on
be
the
good.
bus trip guidelines.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep,
Yeah.
that's on the school bus guidelines. So it'll be a good one to add for the school.
I'll mention that to them tomorrow.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Yep.
Other comments, discussion, Mrs. Tebow, Mr. Pritchard, Mr. Weber?
Just one thing quick on Joey's point that he made earlier. I'd really like to see that topic as a full work session so we could bring some teachers in to gain their perspective on what they're seeing specifically in their classrooms and what things might help them and accomplish some of those goals.
Perhaps what we can do is on the 22nd or on the 29th, have both a work session and then a regular session so that we can have the vote to approve this. But before that, perhaps
Just
having
do
a
a
work
special
session
meeting.
so that we can have a long discussion about the issues that Mr. Weber brought up, which are very important. That will give everyone some time to think, talk to others. Maybe we can invite a few other teachers. Ideally, if things calm down enough, I would kind of like to see that be more of a meeting in the commons where we can spread out, social distance as much as we can. Board members or citizens who don't feel safe with the social distancing, yet we'd allow them to, they could come in and via Skype or via the Zoom conference here. I think hopefully the governor's going to be making some recommendations here. I think June 15th, June 17th be next week, and hopefully with that we can open that up and at least have that in the commons area for more open discussion, be able to get more teachers input, maybe a couple students input too.
The only other thing I would add is I read through this, but I read through it rather rapidly. So I'd like, you know, the next week or so to look at it a little deeper. And then if I did have a question, just email Brad about that, if that's all right.
I was going to suggest that Dr. Menard could keep Mrs. Tebow and Dr. Nystrom informed with updates every 3 or 4 days time, since they're our education committee, so they can stay on top of this subject as it's evolving. Just so we don't have, it'll make it a little bit easier for the board to have had those two people inputting from earlier on from now until the next 2 or 3 weeks from now. I think it eliminated a lot of questions.
That would help and give me just more of a chance to review. And then as updates come through, that would help too.
Dr. Nystrom, is that okay with you?
Yeah, that sounds good because it is a huge undertaking and takes time. It just takes time.
It does take time. So thank you for the
Dr.
report,
Miles?
Dr. Bernard.
I'd also suggest if we do something on the 22nd or 29th, it'd be kind of an open discussion of ideas, because the administrators have a lot going on between now and then with the return to learn plan. I doubt if we'll get very far in developing an equity plan outside of the one on the return to learn. But
That's fine.
But I think an open discussion of what people are looking for and the types of things they'd like to see us do would certainly be helpful.
That's fine. That's fine. I don't think we have to have anything in writing right now. We got an entire summer to get all that part into writing. So, but just have some discussion topics.
I guess I have a question for Jill. Jill, are you the equity coordinator? Is that
Yes,
one of your
ma'am.
duties as a Yeah.
Yes.
Because we do have some things in place, as I recall. Yeah. Thank you.
And
that's
go ahead, Joey.
I would like to know what's already being done, is what has already been done, if that's possible. I mean, just because those are questions that are just coming at us right now. And so it would be nice as board members, when people are sending us emails or stopping us on the street, just asking like, well, what does Boone do? It would be really helpful for us to say, hey, well, these are some things that have been done in the past, and we're going to be meeting to talk about what else can be done in the future. So just, yeah.
It's been an ongoing conversation all the way through, so.
One of the questions whenever we went out on a school visitation was, do you know who your equity coordinator is? So I think it's very, very important that we continue to publicize that Jill is our equity coordinator. So if anybody does have any questions or something, that they know who to contact. So if that can be in the next Toreador Times or sent out. So just as a reminder for everybody, many people may know already, but I always know when we ask students or when we ask parents, a lot of times they didn't know that when we were on school visitations. So publicizing that again, I think would be very good.
Okay. My next question is between the 22nd and 29th, those two dates, does anyone have a conflict with one date or the other that they could not be either on the meeting via Zoom or in person? I'll ask the board members first.
My social life is pretty nil right now, so I'm free both those days.
Okay.
Either
Dr.
day.
Nystrom?
Either day.
Mr. Pritchard?
No, either one works for me.
Okay, Mr. Weber?
Sorry, I was
Joey?
sorry, I was looking at my calendar and then trying to pull this back up. Yeah, I would also agree. Either one looked good for me. So,
Is there any administrators that would not work for? I'm thinking about vacations, that they would not be available that night, even by Skype or by Zoom for an hour or two. Brett, any problems with you?
We have games on those nights.
Okay. Understandable.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Byam?
I'm looking at a trip to Michigan to visit my dad on the 22nd, so the 29th works actually better for me.
Okay, Mr. Winter, you're next. Neither one for you, or either one. And let's see here, Mr. Kelly.
I'm open unless I'm a bouncer at one of the games.
Okay. Mrs. James?
Either
Jill,
one's fine. Either is fine. The 29th gives us more time for return to learn, so that sounds good.
Mrs. Seller?
Sealer. Yeah, the 29th or the Monday before work, just great.
Okay, Bob?
I'm good whenever.
Okay, Jamie? Okay, so I say we do it, I'm gonna recommend the 29th, since we had no conflicts there, and we had one conflict on the 22nd. And as Autumn said, it'll give everyone another week to work on the return to learn. So,
Brian, could I just point out too, the question about Jill being the equity coordinator, that is at the bottom of in the footer of every Toradora Times every week. So it is communicated out. It's also on the webpage and other locations. So we have been communicating that out. A lot of people don't read the footer, so maybe they don't realize it's there, but we have been putting it out there. So
Yeah, it's probably because it's a footer that we don't see it, that not everybody knows. Those footers most people don't read the footers. So yeah, if we could maybe just put an article or, big statement someplace else, that would be good.
Yeah. Maybe an article and saying the board's going to look into this on this date, and that who our current equity officer is and her contact information in that article would be good. Okay, anything else, Dr. Menard? Anyone else on this topic? Okay, I believe that ends topic 3.02, special meeting, June 29th, 6:30 p.m. Baseball and softball update, Mr. Collins.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that our coaches and our student athletes have done a real good job of accepting some of the guidelines and the procedures that we have before and after practice. I just think they're all thrilled that we're able to have a season, so they're willing to do whatever they need to do when it comes down to wiping down equipment, sanitizing hands, social distancing the best that we can. They're still catching themselves when they, go in the dugout or accidentally get too close to each other, but really things are going very well. Coaches are very pleased. The next step and the next hurdle is to see how we can include spectators, and hopefully they will be as willing to accept those changes as our student athletes and coaches have been. We've had parent meetings at every level with our baseball and softball parents. We've gone through the guidelines with our student athletes the first day of practice. And we've also sent a message out listing the expectations and asking for our parents' leadership when they come to our games, so that if they're following through on those guidelines, hopefully grandparents and community members will as well, and visiting teams. I think it's really helped that we've had shared conference guidelines that we've also gone through and shared with our parents, so everybody's kind of on the same page when we play in conference.
I would ask you to possibly remind the students that if they are getting together outside of practice, that they still follow some of those guidelines. I saw several of the baseball players in McCoe's Park at one of the fields there practicing. They were playing, but they were not using social distance in any way, shape, or form. So just as a reminder, it doesn't hurt. I mean, I know they're anxious and they want to be out there and they're doing extra practices is what I'm saying. And maybe this was when I saw them, it was before practice started. I don't know, but they were not doing any social distancing. So
all right,
I don't mean to be a tattletale, but
no, that's fine. We can remind them of those things outside of practice too. When they're not being supervised, it's going to be important. And we also stress that if they're showing any symptoms or not feeling well, that could really be a detriment to their team, and that they really need to stay home, especially this summer, if they're not feeling up to snuff, so to speak. And, we have regulations with where they report their attendance as well as their temperature each day before practice. And so that's at least documented.
And I think we also have a question about Form Every Day, if they have anyone in their household that has been sick and diagnosed with COVID too. I believe that's on here someplace. Because that should be very important. Yeah, it's in the blue. It's on the yellow, the attachment number 2 here, the 3 attachments. The attention one, it's down there about 3/4 of the way down, which is good. We just need to encourage the kids. It's for the best for their team and all their teammates that they follow these rules. The only other thing I would suggest, Mr. Collins, is our public address announcers, make sure they're making frequent announcements.
Yes.
Like every other inning to encourage people.
Yes, we've received the High School Athletic Association actually just yesterday released this morning, as a matter of fact, a list of items that the PA announcer is to announce every other inning. So we have those announcements, and it's consistent with all schools. So Eric, our PA announcer, has been made aware of those, as well as, Scott and I over at Creasman Field. We'll make sure we announce that. We also had some signs made that are placed around both Creasman Field and Memorial Park that have those guidelines on it, right outside before people come in to check themselves, as well as inside the fields, not only for our players for practice protocols, but also spectators.
Great. Okay, sounds good. The other thing is the transportation guidelines and procedures. Mr. Collins, you want to go over those? Do you have any comments?
Nothing big. Would you like me to share my screen to show, or is that necessary?
Board members, do you need that? Or are you okay? No, we don't need the screen shared.
Okay. I think that's an important piece for us for our summer to be able to participate in our schedule. When the initial guidance came out, if you don't read close enough, it restricts to 13 on a bus, and that's just not logistically possible for our ninth grade schedule or our JV varsity schedule. So we put in some further protocols to help provide or to help make sure that we can fit more like 25 on a bus. And that is, each passenger is wearing a mask. Masks are encouraged at games, but we are not requiring them as a conference. But in a bus in close proximity, that's pretty important. It also talks about seating, specific seating, as far as one row is against the window, while the next row is closer to the aisle, one person per row, and leaving a seat behind the bus driver, making sure that we're checking temperatures before they get on the bus, limiting space, those sort of things, wiping down the bus at the end of the night. It just kind of goes through those protocols, and it's very similar to what other schools have done in order to be able to have, especially lower level seasons. We're promoting or requesting also to have each family fill out an additional release or waiver for transportation, just given the circumstances. And there's I believe it's attached, but a waiver that SAI and Matt Carver passed out to schools that is pretty specific on what's supposed to happen with regard to bus and transportation. We also need to pay attention to the bus driver and their safety and health as well, which I think those guidelines pertain to that also. Does anybody have any questions on those or on that proposal?
I will say that I have already reviewed this. I got called as the chairman of the Board of Health in that capacity. Mr. Collins and Mike Kennedy talked to me to make sure that all the rules and regulations were being followed. And if you look at that 13 passenger per bus, it says something about this is ideal, but understand this might not be practical. And so this is the compromise that other school districts are going to. So I felt it was safe from a public health standpoint.
Yeah, and Mike and I have discussed it and gone through it as well. And he feels from his point of view that this is all doable also, the things that we have in this proposal. And if we decide as a district that, that looks good and we're okay to do that, we will make sure that we have each family fill out one of those waivers starting tomorrow when we send them home at practice. And make sure that we have masks for everybody as well.
Hey, Brett, do you guys need any assistance at the home games? Like, Scott made the joke about being a bouncer. Do you need assistance from any of the rest of us helping to just... I really think I appreciate that, Joey. I think we're going to be okay. I've been pretty firm with our families and saying that we really need them
We've encouraged them to bring their own chairs, their lawn chairs. We've made sure that we've had space in the outfield and not put up all the signs and the windscreens and everything so people can spread out. And we've warned them that there'll only be limited seating. It's really hard to be the social distancing police, so we've kind of put that across. Families need to be social distance. There'll be limited seating on the bleachers. I really think that our families will do a good job, and if we have other families that fill in, I think it helps that every other school is facing the same barriers too. It's just it helps if anybody's at a game just to be mindful and help reminding everybody and encouraging, because it's not going to be a perfect scenario, but we've got some things that I reached out to parents, like, don't grab foul balls. We have a system of players going to get that, because if somebody else outside the field touches it, then we have to sanitize it. Just things like that, and that stuff's going to be posted around the park too, so we can reference that as well. But I appreciate that. Yeah, anytime you're around, just kind of be looking for those things.
Okay. I believe we probably need a motion, even though technically Pat and I could approve this, for the transportation guidelines and procedures. Could I have a motion to approve that?
This is Pat. I move to approve the transportation guidelines and procedures.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, it's been moved by Ms. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Weber to approve the transportation guidelines and procedures for summer athletics. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those, Jeremy.
Brett, one time that I appreciate your hard work, Brett. I know it's been difficult, and you're salvaging a season for some kids, and a lot of people appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks, Jeremy. I mean, it's really, it could have been a lot worse if we didn't have people willing to be flexible and plan and being helpful through the process. We're lucky to have some really good coaches that are willing to do this for our kids. I know they're excited about it and being ready to play. So thanks for that.
Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously, and Mr. Collins, on behalf of the board and on behalf of the students and the parents in the district, would like to thank you for all your hard work you've done in getting this season rescheduled. And hopefully we don't have to put another reschedule in there.
Yeah, I know. Thank you all. And we'll make sure we get that information out to our families first thing tomorrow morning.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next up is the standards-based grading. Mr. Bynum and Mrs. James, you're up.
We, over the last couple of weeks, obviously since we started going to the continuous learning plan, we continue to work through the process of our grading practices, especially doing things a little bit differently than what we've had to do in the past. And so we've had to adjust that, adjust those grading practices. Bob, can I share my screen?
Yes.
Jill, are you good? Okay. It's not letting me, Bob.
It's set to let anyone share the screen.
Oh, there we go. Got it. We're good. All right. So Jill and I kind of wanted to explain kind of what we've been doing, the process that, no, we're not getting anything. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
For some reason, it keeps kicking me out of there. So I'll just go slide by slide this way. Can you at least see that part?
Yes.
Okay. So one thing for the rest of the board that didn't know, we've met with the academic committee from the board. We kind of gone through our plan. We've also had discussions with our teachers in this process. And we feel that one of the things that has been a pretty large conflict for us in the transition from traditional school to online school is our grading practices. And so one of the things that we started working on, obviously with the Return to Learn plan, is how can we better do our grading practices if we were on-site, off-site, or in a hybrid model. And so we've started to kind of work that way, have a discussion with our teachers, our students, obviously the board, and through the administration to try to figure out exactly what would be the best way to be able to support our students' learning. So a couple of things during the closure itself, we had to move all of our classes to a pass and complete. Teachers were identified the remaining essential standards that they had for the remainder of the semester, and we gave passing grades determined based on the evidence of standard mastery. So we went away from some of the completion pieces, and really kind of upped our game to show evidence of mastery of the content, which is something that we've been working on and talking about for many years, and something that we've been wanting to do. So some of the things that we're looking at for the 2021 school year is we need to be able to have consistent grading and feedback for our students, and then obviously a clarity for our students and families on mastery and success criteria. Because
I'm going to jump in. Sorry, it's hard because I can't see your face and see your presentation, but
sure.
That was something that was when Autumn and I were facilitating the academic standards subcommittee for Return to Learn. That came out, we kind of broke people into subgroups of 3 or 4, and that really came out in several of the groups that to get better at continuous learning, we needed to be better at being able to give more consistent grading and feedback, and different levels talked about what pieces they had. If we have rubrics, those rubrics should be shared with the families and with the students. So if you're learning at home, you have a clearer picture of what mastery and success really looks like. If we have proficiency scales, those things are very helpful, and just being much better at being able to identify and communicate to our students and families what it means to show and demonstrate that you've learned what you need to in the course, and less about did I complete this assignment or not, because it was hard for parents to know and students to know if what they completed and did was good enough. And so we proficiency scales, rubrics, standards-based type learning kept coming up in that academics standards Return to Learn committee, which is why we bring it to you now.
One of the things that we started looking at is what the research is showing, especially when it comes to college admissions, because that's been one of the biggest topics and questions when it comes to standard-based grading. We have a kind of an expert in Jill and Dr. Janes that her husband actually works at Iowa State and kind of knows the ins and outs. And there's been a lot of discussion amongst the state and actually around the nation when it comes to standard reference grading or standard-based grading. Jill, did you want to talk about this one a little bit?
Sure. There are studies out there. I think that Chris has worked with several of his teachers to identify, what does the research say about standards-based grading? But several of the things that he's highlighted here on the slides are things that have come up in our discussions at home, and the things that I know that the team with the Regent Universities and the Department of Education have been working on to just kind of determine what universally should a transcript look like, and what does it mean when, for a student to demonstrate that they're going to be successful at that next level. And, grade inflation, inaccurate portrayals of student performance, all of those things are make it difficult when you're looking at an A, a B, or a grade point average to really know what it is that a student knows. And can demonstrate to be successful at that next level, versus that standards-based learning that maybe separates some of those behaviors, talks about a level of mastery, and better defines if a student is really prepared for that, whatever comes next.
And when you're looking at learning and learning the content within the essential standards, one of the things that studies have shown is that there's an increased remediation within colleges, because grading practices vary so much. So for instance, in our school a few years back, we had 44 different grading policies for 44 different teachers. And so that's one of the things that we've worked extremely hard at, trying to get a consensus in what the learning looks like, rather than having all kinds of different policies that are very hard to follow. A couple of interesting quotes. One, every student succeeds act. One of those pieces is recognizing proficiency-based learning invites new innovative accountability systems based on proficiency-based learning. That's coming from the New England Board of Higher Education, and they were doing a study with a lot of Ivy League schools on that. They feel that the Every Student Succeeds Act is really starting to focus and recognize standard reference grading in a way to look at the innovative practices and accountability for our students. And so obviously one of those factors, if you start looking at schools within the top 10 within the state, you know, you're looking at Ames, you're looking at Gilbert and other schools that have already started to make this transition or have made that transition. Another interesting topic in terms of kind of raising the bar. Ultimately, leaders in both K-12 and higher education have responsibility for leading their respective organizations in ways that advance the preparation of college and career-ready learners. In spite of entrenched attitudes and other barriers, improvements in grading systems that more accurately communicate student achievement are needed, and K-12 leaders should not wait for those higher education and waiting in higher education to change. And I think right now, I think that this is our opportunity to go there, especially with our struggle with our grading practices, you know, with online learning. It definitely needs to take a different approach towards our grading practices. Jill, anything for you? Okay, you want to hit this?
Yes, I'll do this one. So part of that discussion with that Return to Learn committee, the high school team and other administrators was, you know, what's the work that we have done in school improvement over the last several years? You know, are we prepared to make a shift, or you know, where are we in that process? And there's a lot of foundational work that goes into standards-based grading that really is a part of that PLC process that we've spoken with the board about over the last several years, and that emphasis that we really put on district improvement and PLCs beginning in that 17-18 school year. So you can just kind of see a timeline here of that PLC and professional learning community implementation process, and our teachers really beginning to identify what was essential in their classes and grade levels, break those into clear and measurable learning targets, start to work on common assessments, and then continuing that work in those professional learning communities, and start to this past school year, really that emphasis was on balanced assessment systems and better assessments, as well as what's a mastery scale look like? What's it mean to, you know, dig into our rubrics and look at them a little bit closer around what are different levels of mastery that a student might have for each standard. And those things go right along with a standards-based learning approach. So throughout the same process as we've been implementing professional learning communities, we've been talking a lot in all of our teams and with our building teams about standards-based learning, and really making sure that the feedback that we provide to kids and to families is about the learning and, you know, where they stand in that level of their understandings. And that provides a better roadmap for our students about, you know, where they are and where they need to come next. Or go next. And, you know, there are some things on the implementing standards-based learning kind of timeline. This was developed last spring as kind of a, well, let's look at what these two pieces look like when they run parallel. And there are some things that just didn't happen in 2019, 2020. You know, we all know the last couple of months have been a bit unique, but for the most part, to be able to, you know, make a larger shift in some of those grading practices, we're right on target with having those foundational pieces put in place, that where the teachers are ready, the teachers, and we have some more data here that we'll show you after this, but we've done a lot of work over the last 3+ years that set the stage for that next step, which is then changing the ways that we communicate with our students and families.
So this is kind of unpacking that. These are the key components for a successful implementation. And I think that's one of the things that makes us feel comfortable in the possibility of moving. Each one of these, this actually comes from the AEA and guidelines and pieces that they've put together that help kind of unpack standard reference grading and some of the components that you need to prepare for. And you'll notice by the check marks, these are pieces that we've worked on. Obviously this year we worked on the balance assessment piece. We can still do some accommodation and modification pieces, but we have that kind of built into our program. And then we've really worked on our interventions with our assessments this last year. And so a couple of these actually have, this was kind of from an older presentation, but we can check off some of those pieces that puts us in a really good place in order to do that. Obviously, we've continued our professional learning, the instructional cycle. We've done that with our teacher leaders. And then over the last few years, we've done a lot with our growth mindset and things like that and preparing for this transition. One of the things that we started looking at is our readiness. So all of our students have experienced at least a pilot in standard-based grading and using proficiency scales for communicating learning. So in November, we actually ran a walkthrough. The administration would go in. We did a professional development where our teachers were actually, all of them had to create a proficiency scale. It needed to be posted, and it needed to have an understanding of what was going on within that essential standard. And so everything was posted during that time. And then Drake and I did walkthroughs of the majority of the staff to check to make sure that it was working the way it was supposed to. So students knew how to find the proficiency scales for the course. So we had it posted on the walls. We had it posted on Classroom. They understood where those were and how to find those 72% of the time. And then students knew what the proficiency scale meant in terms of learning. So a lot of fascinating conversations with the students where Drake and I would specifically ask students, can you tell me about the proficiency scale? What does that mean? What does that mean for your learning? And very detailed responses from our students, understanding the depth of the learning that we wanted. And that's one of the tricks to the puzzle is, can the students tell you what they need to learn and then how they're going to learn it? And so those were a couple of the pieces that we worked on to try to gain an idea of where our students were when it came to readiness.
Just real quickly on that slide, explain to me the N of 33. If we figure we got 600 kids in the high school, that's only about 5% response. How many people did you survey? Who did you survey? Because
these were classes that we went in. So we tried to go into as many teachers as we could. Some of the special education teachers did not fit into this. They were doing co-teaching pieces. And so we dropped into courses that the teachers have identified to use a proficiency scale. And so pretty much all of the teachers had a walkthrough and we talked to the students within those classes. So the 33 responses or the 32 responses are Drake and my walkthrough of one of the courses. So that the teachers identified. So it's basically one time per teacher.
One time per teacher. So it means we're doing 40 walkthroughs. That means you only got one response per classroom for each of those classrooms.
We may have talked to more than one student, but those responses were, you marked a yes or a no as you went through to say, when you talk to kids in Mrs. Vanyo's class, were they able to, point out where the proficiency scale is and talk about what it meant. So the teacher identified which course they wanted to try to implement the professional learning in, and we gave them some time to do that. And then the administrators went through and they would pop into those classes at different times and talked to a subset of kids and then marked, did the kids know where it was or not? Did the kids could they explain it or not?
So it was a
So
fidelity
labeling
check.
this responses, it's more like should be 33 classes, and 72% of the time the kids in that class knew, and 27% of the time the kids did not.
It's the way that the Google form submits its information.
So, but saying classes, we've made much more accurate than saying students, because if you say students, well, you interview one student in each one of those classes. Well,
We also
we all know the
identified what the students said, but we weren't going to share all those responses either.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so kind of on the same notion with a reflection, Jill, did you want to talk about this one?
Sure. We have a couple of teachers who have spent the last 2 years kind of piloting standards-based grading or standards reference grading in their courses. And those teachers have worked very closely with our instructional coaches, made that kind of their professional learning goal. And so as they submit their reflections on, on that individual professional development goal and again, how they're doing and implementing that. This one, it was just a quote from one of those teachers this spring, reflecting on the implementation, and I think it speaks well to that teacher's observations of the students, particularly because this particular teacher sees kids in core classes. I don't want to say too much, but in core classes. And so students may have her 1 year and then have her again the next year. And this quote just kind of shows she feels like the kids who have returned and in the second year, we're taking another class that used that grading and feedback method. They really knew what it was that the standard meant. The standards were different than what they had learned the year before, but they knew how to use that information to guide their learning, to come in and use win time better, to think about where they were and what they might need to do next to move forward in their learning. And then this teacher also reflected that there were a few seniors who weren't in a class that used that the next year or during their senior year. And they reflected on how they missed that. They appreciated that clarity in their learning. And one of those students did her proposal paper for advanced comp on why we should move forward with SRG and school-wide implementation and the benefits that she saw as a learner in that process.
So one of the things that we did before we left, after we met with the educational committee from the board, we decided we were going to check out to make sure that our teachers felt ready. We used our own proficiency scale during this time and tried to gather some feedback on where they're at. We know that within setting goals and tracking progress, that's a spot that we still need to work on with our teachers, but that's something that is not a surprise there. We continue to work on teaching exceptional students, and that's something that we can focus in some of our professional development in for this year. Instruction with proficiency skills, I was pleasantly surprised and happy with the responses. That I think we feel that we're in a good place to move forward with this, with the extra professional development that we can put in as we start the school year to be ready to go for whether or not we're going to be at school or online. So some of our next steps, I kind of mentioned that summer, fall professional development based on June teacher survey data. Obviously, I talked about that a little bit already, that setting goals and tracking progress is going to be something that we're going to be looking at. We feel that some weekly communication with families, that this is something that we've been doing now since spring break, looking at standards, but then also working on what does the proficiency skills look like so it can identify and help the learning process for our parents if we were to be at home again. So making sure that we're doing some weekly communication from here until the beginning of school, maybe putting a weekly update on grading on the Toreador Times so that they know that this is something that's coming down the pike. And then creating a BHS grading and implementation handbook. We've got some examples from other schools throughout the state, and we feel that that's something that we can put together reasonably quick. Any questions? I misspelled resources there.
The biggest question that I've had from educators is there a difference between the daily work you like to see kids complete so you can gauge how they're progressing, and then there's the project or the big idea focus so they can demonstrate their skills? That's the biggest question. If you don't get feedback from the kids pretty regularly to find out what they know and what they don't know, then if you wait till the project and you wait, I think that might be the hardest thing for some instructors.
We've worked extremely hard at creating a lot of different formative assessments and what does assessment look like in comparison to a summative assessment. And I think that's something that we continue to improve on. What does a formative assessment look like? In a lot of cases, you're creating 3 or 4 formative assessments for your one summative that you have at the end of that standard. And so we've done a lot with that. And then obviously, as we identify those essential standards and we're creating the proficiency scales, it helps us identify exactly what the learning targets are within the system itself.
Yeah, this work goes hand in hand with that work that those professional learning communities are doing. I'm thinking of similar conversations at the high school level, as well as with, say, a Franklin team, as they're looking at a unit and they're thinking about, what's that end goal for mastery, but then what are those checkpoints that we need along the way, those formatives that are going to give the team some data to be able to respond and be responsive. And again, I think this is just that next step of, we've started to identify those much, much better in this last year in our unit plans and guides. But then that next step is we need to communicate those with the kids so that the kids can see that, here's the formative and this is how it aligns with that overall standard. And, am I on target to meet that standard, or is there an area that I still need to work? Some learning targets that I haven't hit yet that come before that mastery piece. And so that communication with the kids and families is, I think, what we haven't taken the step to begin to do well, although that we just shared with you that we've piloted some things, but fully implementing in that way has not, would be our next step.
I would just support that as a parent.
Teachers like to see a product that's complete, even when it isn't really, I'll use the word graded, because they just like to see progress, or they like to see what they need to do next. And if you never get a product, and like what happened this summer in a lot of cases, or this school year, wasn't even summer. How can you gauge that day-to-day progression? That's a question I think people have.
I think there's all sorts of ways to gauge that. As a career tech ed teacher, we've been doing standards-based grading since the dawn of time. So career tech ed teachers really could help the other teachers understand how to do that. And you do assess the students periodically as you go throughout the term. It's not just a one and end project. You do smaller projects leading up to the bigger projects. And there's a rubric for each one of those, and there's standards based on each one of those. So I know the PD that they'll be doing, I think will show that. But again, I say call on some of your career tech ed teachers or whatever, because I'm sure they can help you with that. Again, we've been doing standards-based grading since the beginning of career tech ed.
And I was a CTE teacher, so I agree with you. That's basically what we did.
I was just going to say, from a parent perspective, I think the communication with parents will be really important throughout, which is what you're talking about, because I think it could be dangerous if you wait till the end of the course to find out that your child hasn't mastered all of the information that they need to meet the requirements of the course, which I know you all are talking about that at the high school, Chris. So I think maybe that's a concern that Pam was sharing, that how is that communicated out to the parents. And I know for me as a parent, I want to be able to keep up on is he doing what he's supposed to be doing, or, you know, are they getting the information? Are they learning the information that they're supposed to? And if not, what's happening to support them in that process?
Any other comments, questions for any board members?
I guess I would go ahead and move the acceptance of the standards-based grading plan for this next year. Although I'd rather go slower with this change and everything, we need to move. So I move that we go forward with it.
This is not on the agenda as an action item. I think it was just an informational item right now.
Okay.
So there's nothing to vote on because it just says information. So
I think we were bringing it back in the handbook because it's a handbook thing, not a, I don't think it's a policy piece.
And additionally, this one is highlighted somewhat in that return to learn plan with academic standards, as it came up in that committee as a, how are we going to communicate progress and improve in that process? So it's woven into several things that are coming your way.
Yeah, we'll have to approve the handbook.
Sure
So
we were covered one way or another.
yep. Thank you. Yep. And it's somewhat confusing here, but with all these changes this year, but we'll get through it. So any other comments? Otherwise, we'll move on to the high school summer school program. Mr. Byram and Dr. Menard.
We had originally come to you with the summer school program back in February, I believe it was. And of course, some things have changed because our whole approach to learning changed for the fourth quarter. And we have some students that we need to get caught up, and yet most of our kids did pretty well. We were really pleased with the number of kids that actually participated and met the required learning and met the essential standards for those courses. But we need to focus a little bit more on our high school to make sure that we're in good shape for all of our kids starting the school year. And so Jill and Chris and Drake had been working to put together a plan for the high school summer school. I shared some of that information with you previously in the board report last week. And we're looking at, in that report, we looked at an increase of about $4,000 in cost, which when you consider the complete change of the learning approach and the online approach that had to be adopted, that's not too bad a price to pay to get our kids all caught up and in good shape. It may be a touch higher than that because one of the things that we did not include was some planning time for the teachers as they're working with kids. So each teacher may go up about 4 hours on their salary, which may get us up another couple $1,000s. But Jill and Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about how you're envisioning this?
Sure. Well, first, I just want to jump in and say, sorry, Chris, I'm going to steal your thunder, but I have the date the numbers in front of me. Sorry, do you have the numbers in front of you? Do you want to do the update?
Go ahead, you're good.
Man, I was just waiting for June 2nd and to end and the teachers to have all their grades in so that we could pull the data to see, you know, how did we do? How many kids did we get through? How many kids, you know, still had incompletes in their classes? And at the end of our regular school year at the high school level, our 9th through 11th grade students, we had 73% of them complete all their classes, and 85, is it 85 or 86? 83% of kids completed all their core. So the classes that they didn't complete were some elective classes. And, you know, we think about the ways that we counseled our students. You know, we want you to complete everything now. If you're struggling to complete things, really focus in on that core that keeps you on track for graduation. So we were really incredibly pleased with that data and how our kids did and our teachers to support the students through the closure. So that has sets the stage for how many still are left to finish up during summer school. But we just want to take a moment to celebrate that extremely hard work of our students and our teachers and all of our staff to get them through that. All right, on that note, Chris, summer school.
On that note, so one of the things that we felt like we needed to do is we needed to make sure that we were keeping up with the core when it comes to their credits. So we're requesting that we hire 2 English teachers because we have to have 4 years of English when it comes to credits. We need math, we need science. We felt like we needed some Spanish, and then special education. We just genuinely feel that having the teachers involved during our summer school, one of the things that we said was during the closure, the ultimate goal is that they're getting those essential standards one way or another, whether it's and it's from our teachers. And so we're going to hold that standard. Students that were passing and were close to finishing up or partial finish or did not complete anything during that basically our fourth quarter, they're going to be doing the online work that way. If there's any sort of course recovery where they need to do the full course like we've done in the past, then we'll look at doing our Edmentum pieces. And so that's a little bit of a change than what we've done in the past, but we genuinely feel that having the teachers and the support of the teachers, where I've already talked to the teaching staff and they're going to be meeting with the students and having them, with some required pieces in order to get that credit. So we just felt that it was a prime opportunity to kind of close in that gap. I've talked to a lot of different schools and they handed credits out and things like that. And we wanted our students to learn the information rather than giving them just the credits. And I think we've set ourselves up extremely well. I heard a number a couple weeks ago where there was 15 to 20% engagement at another school and things like that. To say that we were in the 80s when it comes to our core, I think is a testament to the great work that our staff put forward. And I'm really proud of the work that our staff and our kids did. And now it's just a matter of getting them caught up and we're good to go.
Okay.
So what we're really looking for is support to amend our high school summer school program and provide some additional funding for some core teachers to help us get our kids caught up before the start of the school year for those few that we have that need some support.
Comments from board members first.
Will the teachers' workloads vary drastically? I mean, there was quite the range in pay. Will some of them be in charge of more kids than others?
Our summer school has traditionally been ran that teachers are paid at their personal per diem. So those rates vary depending on teacher experience and where they fall on the salary schedule.
The other thing that we did is we put a couple of coordinators in to help manage and facilitate the load to lower the class load for the teachers. So Shannon Zinnel will be doing kind of what she has done in the past, where she's contacting students, kind of working through their schedule, getting them, following up with grades, things like that. Kind of the management pieces of it, whereas the teachers are going to primarily be working with the kids and getting kind of gathering all the different lessons and things like that where the student needs to be. But we have the facilitation piece that Shannon's going to be helping with. And then Sarah Madsen is our director of online learning, and she does a lot of different things. And so we've asked her to take care of the Edmentum piece because that's something that she knows extremely well.
And you feel like you have enough staff to cover your needs this summer?
I think so, yeah.
Is there any, in the COVID-19 funding and everything, emergency funding, is there any money available from the state to help us out with this type of program? Dr. Menard, Mr. Lewis, do you guys have any ideas on that?
Mitch, does any of the SAVE funds fall into that, or the the CARES funds?
Yeah, we can use those funds for it. It kind of directs it to minorities and stuff like that. Let me find that email I sent you, Brad. Oh.
Chris, the pay that was listed on those forms is based on the hours that all those teachers are working, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on average, I think the majority of the teaching staff is about 6 hours or something like that a week.
8 hours per week, and then that extra week of planning to, if I'm the math teacher and I'm overseeing the math for summer school, I know the math continuous learning that's out there for the course I taught, but perhaps I'm not as familiar with what's out there for the other courses on my team. And so giving them some additional planning time to make sure that they have access to all that they need to support the kids as a part of that. It comes to 52 hours for those core teachers, and then the coordinator roles have some additional hours.
I'm pulling it up here.
Jeremy, kind of to answer your question, we're kind of sailing the ship as we're building it.
No, I understand. I just want to make sure you're covered this year. It's
Yeah,
important. Summer.
Yeah, and I hope we are. I think we have enough time there that we can. It's going to be 6 weeks, and then we'll have a little bit of time to get ourselves situated for what we're going to do when we come back to. I have a feeling that our win time is going to be pretty important this year, at least for the first month or two, for our credit recovery pieces.
Okay.
Particularly with elective classes, because we're really trying to focus in on summer school on core, and we know there are kids that still have electives to complete, and some of that involves the counselors circling back with the kids to say, is this an elective that you need, that you want to make sure that you recover? Where do we stand in that process?
For it to work for the CARES Act is for planning and implementing activities related to summer learning and supplemental after-school programs, low-income children, children of students with disabilities, English learners, migrant students, racial ethnic minorities, homelessness and youth care, foster care. So I don't know how much of that we could use for regular.
Right. There wouldn't be all the kids. It might be a few of the kids that qualify, but not all of them. Okay.
Right.
The other question I have is, this is all great for our high school kids. What about our elementary kids? How much participation do we have from the elementary kids and those elementary kids falling behind? I've heard from some elementary teachers, both in Boone District and other districts, that they've been concerned because the lower elementary kids, unlike junior and high school kids, who can basically get on the computer system themselves to get up to date and get on to ask their teachers questions on. A lot of the lower elementary kids, they have to have their parents around. Parents are working, and it's a lot tougher to work with those kids. And so my question for this, probably to Ms. Winter and Autumn, what was your participation rates in your your schools, and how much proficiency do you feel that your kids had? We know we've got 83% on core for the high school. What would maybe Jill, you can answer some of this too. Where are we stand at the elementary level? Because I don't want to leave those elementary kids out.
We did collect engagement data there too. We had our teachers at the end of the, in their last week in their teams, list all their students. And at the elementary level, it's a lot harder to kind of gauge, right, what they had to complete. But we kind of had a little rubric that the teachers used. Were they highly engaged? Were they moderately engaged? Or you saw little to no engagement from that particular student, and kind of tracked that data. Many of the teachers, as they filled that out in their teams, they noted that, the data they had, or that where they saw most of the engagement, was when we tried to do any sort of live something over the computer with the students. So if there was a small group reading group, I know several teachers use that method or something like that. The engagement went way up for those types of activities. Then what we put out on the continuous learning, for assignments and stuff for students to do. A lot of that, as we got started going in continuous learning, we put more things out there as exit tickets or things for the kids to submit. For the first couple of weeks, we didn't necessarily do that. It was like, this is optional and we hope you do it, but we had no way to know if they did or not. So we got a little bit better, and we weren't sure that we had great data in that. Again, all that's good feedback to help us in our return to learn plan on what are the things that our parents and students were most engaged with, and what are the ways that we can give feedback, track student progress, and all of that. But I would say we have little graphs for most of the elementary teachers, and they were looking at 50 to 2/3 of their kids being moderately or highly engaged, but most of them noted that number was based more off of times where they were having some sort of face-to-face communication with the students. Autumn, Brad, do you want to jump in on anything there? I'm just looking at the graphs.
I think one of the big things for that too is, I mean, and I would argue that I don't know my high schoolers can do the online learning so well either. I think it's difficult for many of us to be engaged in the same way. We were all learning this spring for sure. I think the thing about elementary, and Brad, you can agree or disagree with this, is we don't really have a ton of constrained skills. So many of our standards kind of build and grow, and we're used to kids being at a variety of levels for that. And so we have a lot of supports in place for that. We've talked with our teams. They've really narrowed in on what's essential of the essential. They've already planned that for next year. Going into the fall, we've also planned what things the majority of the kids will need when they come in. For example, the preschoolers didn't get as much time with letters and sounds as they normally do, and writing was a concern. So we've already kind of planned as kindergarten teachers what they're going to do to respond to that. And because the majority of the students are going to need that level of support, I feel like the system is already ready to support them that way. We have win time for that. We have data-driven instruction by our teachers that are ready to pull small groups or respond with their core to those needs of the student, because all kids weren't at school. And so that, because of that factor, I think we're really able to engage that way. I think particularly it was great for our kids to get that boost in the summer, but we didn't see huge jumps in data in the past when they did that. It was more of a maintain category. We're really going to have to dig in with data and be intentional how we do that, and no matter what format we return in. And so because of that, I think, systemically, that is probably the best way to respond, is as a system, evaluating our practices, doing the work we've done with essential standards, doing some more work with how we're going to assess kids if it's over the computer versus how are we going to do it if they're in the classroom, some of those things that we've learned this spring for sure. So I don't know, Brad, if you want to.
We've also talked about the importance of doing assessments, benchmark assessments right away in the fall, and then also doing testing for or assessments for prerequisite skills before starting instruction. So if students don't have some of the prerequisite skills they need for certain essential standards, filling in those missing skills or standards before starting instruction on the grade level, on the standard at the grade level.
Okay.
I guess to summarize, at that elementary and middle school level, we really feel like summer school wouldn't necessarily be as effective as thinking about our whole system and how we respond as a whole when we have the kids back, instead of piecemeal. At the high school, knowing we had more engagement through some of the requirements for credits, we can leverage summer school a lot more effectively, I think.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? Okay, hearing no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the new summer school program, or the modifications of the summer school program.
This is Pat. I move to approve the summer modification of the summer school program.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Pritchard to approve the modifications of the summer school program as presented to the board. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Next is the EBCE contract. Dr. Menard.
This is our annual contract for our transition employment program for our high school students. We work through Genesis Development, and they have offered the same contract for next year without an increase in cost. So I'd recommend we approve that.
Okay. Just a little housekeeping item is Genesis has had a restructuring and ownership change, and they're now called Imagine the Possibilities instead of Genesis. This happened this past winter. There were some management issues and some financial issues such that it's a large organization now. But they still provide the same services here in Boone. Any other questions? Hearing none, although, can I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the contract with Imagine the Possibilities.
Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Nystrom and seconded by Mr. Pritchard, nearly simultaneously, to approve the Imagine the Possibilities contract. Any discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Now the YSS mentoring agreement, Dr. Menard.
Excuse me. Each year we work with YSS and some mentoring for our students at the middle school and elementary level. And we pay a minimal fee for that of $2,500 and provide an office in the schools. So I would recommend we approve that for next school year.
Okay.
I would just like to mention that they need to address the correct school district in their first item.
Yes. Very good catch, Ms. Nystrom. On line number 1 of the contract, it says this agreement is between Ames Community School District and Youth Elder Services. So,
yep.
We're going to need to send this back to them.
Yep.
Good catch.
Thank you, Pam.
One question I had with this YSS, the mentoring contract, I guess, kind of wondering what exactly it entails. Because as we look forward, I mean, we've already discussed how we have one counselor at the middle school, and Sue just retired, and I know we've replaced her, but yeah, I mean, Sue was doing a lot of stuff in those areas of social, emotional, mental health, and so just knowing what COVID has done to the world around us, I didn't know if there was any more we could get from YSS in the areas of mentoring and mental health and guidance. So yeah, just kind of questions I had.
I was in contact with Jill Hill at YSS or at the end of last week, and at this time they haven't determined to do any additional services, but we're going to have a meeting to talk about that, and she was going to get back to me because it was something that I said if we could do some partnerships. They have some services and skilled people that maybe they could help us with. So we're in discussion with them, but nothing has taken place yet as far as any proposal or anything.
Joey, I'm a mentor at Franklin, and I know that they reached out to me to see if I would like to continue to be in contact with my mentee. And so I was willing to write letters this summer and keep in touch with him a little bit, if it was okay with his mom. And it was, so she allowed them to give me her address. We just got a card from YSS asking if we would be willing to be mentors again. And we would, would we consider continuing with our former student, that type of thing. So they have reached out to us, I would say at least 3 times with different information since we got out of school in March.
Okay. Any further discussion on this topic? Hearing no further discussion, I will entertain a motion to approve the YSS mentoring agreement once the line one has been corrected to Boone Community Schools.
Motion to approve YSS mentoring contract.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Weber, second by Dr. Nystrom to approve the YSS mentoring contract with the Boone Schools. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is school lunch prices.
Yeah, the Department of Education and the USDA work, the Department of Nutrition works with USDA, and there's a formula for establishing prices and what they need to be at. And our adult prices need to go up 10 cents to meet that requirement. It's a minor cost adjustment for us, but it keeps us in line with the requirements of the USDA. So I'd recommend we increase our school lunch prices to $3.85.
That's just for the adult lunches, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the change in the adult lunch price?
I move to approve change in the school lunch price.
Okay, is there a second? Been moved. Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Pritchard, seconded by Mrs. Teeman to approve the increase in the adult lunch price to $3.85. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Now, board policy 403.1, this is employee physical examination, second reading. Dr. Menard?
Yes, this is part of our work with our workman's compensation to include physicals, pre-employment physicals for employees to ensure their health and well-being and capabilities to do the job they're being hired for. This is a second reading. We'd recommend that this be approved.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve this policy?
This is Pat. I move to approve the policy.
Okay, motion's been made by Mrs. Teevan and seconded by Dr. Nystrom to approve the second reading of the employee physical examination, policy 403.1. This, of course, is from hirees from now on. Does not affect people already employed. Any further discussion on this issue? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes. Next, the management teacher job description. Dr. Menard.
Yes, last month we did the support staff job descriptions, and these are for the managers and teachers to complete our job descriptions, those descriptions that are not part of policy. And so I would recommend we approve these.
Question, please. The last one is stated as teacher leader job description. When I opened it up, it's special ed job description.
I saw that too, Pat.
So I'm wondering if we've got the wrong one there.
Yeah, let me pull it up real quick and see here.
Yeah, so it's still there, special ed.
All the rest match their titles. That one does not.
Yeah, I'm not finding my file. Hold on just a minute. And that, for some reason, my teacher file isn't here. it's probably, I'll have to look at it and correct it, because probably what it is, I know we did both a special education and a teacher leader job description. And I did the special ed first, then copied that and then worked off that template, and I must not have changed the title.
No, the job description looks like special ed as well. I started reading it and it does not, it looks like a teacher job description, not a teacher leader job description.
Okay.
The teacher leader description is correct in the teacher file.
This talks specifically about, when I read this, it's talking about teachers are responsible for leading learning for their students. The teacher leaders don't have students directly, do they?
I think I know the link that you're looking at, Pat. Under the managers, there's a one that says teacher leader, and that one
No, this is the job description under the agenda.
Yeah, and it is.
If you open up the agenda, there's job descriptions for each of these jobs.
Mhm.
And they're entitled, but the one for teacher leader is the special ed teacher one, not the teacher leader one. I just think the wrong one was attached with under that title.
The one I'm opening, the teacher leader, talks about the teacher leader.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, but there's
not what
a
was
different one.
The title says classroom teacher, and it should say teacher leader.
We're not seeing that one at all.
No, we
I
didn't.
did find that one, but the one I think she's talking about is when you first open, you get down, you get director of building and grounds, then you get director of technology job description, director of transportation job description,
Yes.
food service director, and then the next one says teacher leader job description. If you actually look at the top part of it, it says special education teacher job description.
Look into the teacher file. That's a mistake. That was one I was working as a template. If you look under the teacher file, there's a teacher leader job description at the bottom.
Yeah, I just think the summary is wrong too on it.
Yeah.
I believe the summary is wrong. Other than that, it might be fine. The summary and the title is wrong.
The summary, the teacher leader or instructional improvement leader is an educational leader focused on curriculum, that one?
That's not what I'm reading.
Okay, you open up the teacher file and the last one is a teacher leader job description.
That's the one I'm opening up, and that is not what I am reading. Summary says teachers are responsible for leading learning for their students. Teachers develop a curriculum and lesson plans and present those lessons to their students individually or in groups. That's what I'm reading as a summary.
And that's not what when I'm clicking on it.
And that's
okay.
in the agenda. From the agenda, that's the link.
And that's what I just opened. I'm sorry. I just opened the job descriptions and went to the teacher job descriptions, and the last one is teacher leader.
Again, I'm just opening it up through the agenda. I don't have the other ones. I'm just opening it up through the agenda.
You do. So I'm exactly what Dr. Menard is talking about. So I went through the same thing that we got on the agenda. And so it's the tab at the very top of the Google Docs. You know, the first thing you go into is just the manager job descriptions, but then at the very top of that, there is a little tab that says teacher job descriptions. I think what Dr. Menard is trying to say is the one at the very bottom of the managers, the teacher leader, that's just something he was using as a template. Like that's not an actual description. The description for the teacher leader is in that other tab that is at the top.
Okay, and all I was saying is that one at the bottom, the teacher leader job description was not correct.
Yeah.
And I can delete that one right now.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, that one's gone. So, sorry for the confusion.
Okay, now I see the other one too. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, any other comments, questions about these job descriptions? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the job descriptions as presented?
I would move to approve the job descriptions as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's moved by Mr. Pritchard, second by Mr. Weber, to approve the teacher job descriptions as presented after Dr. Menard made that one little change there. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, motion passes. Next is the superintendent's report.
Yeah, we have a big weekend planned. Chris has been working hard on the graduation activities this weekend and coordinating with a lot of community resources, and really, I think, has a nice plan put together. And as he and I talked this afternoon, the weather looks to be about 78 and sunny, so it looks like it's going to work out well for us. That's always a challenge in June, but we have Futures graduation at noon at Futures School, and that's a drive-through graduation. And then we have a regular graduation starting at 3:45. Kids show up, and then at the racetrack, and they'll do a little processional through town starting at 4:15 with their families in their cars, and get to Geppinger Field and have graduation ceremony starting at 5. Chris, anything you'd like to share about the role of the board and the responsibilities they'll have there?
It's very similar to what we've run in the past for those of you that haven't been involved. Typically, we will have all the board members sitting on the stage. We'll kind of go through, Dr. Menard will do the welcome. We'll go through some of the awards and things that our students and accolades that we typically honor at graduation. Just a quick speech, and then we will have the commencement piece that Dr. Menard, Dr. Melhouse, and myself participate in terms of handing the diplomas. There really isn't another role for the rest of the board, but to be present. Couple of interesting things. I got off the phone this evening with just before the meeting with the racetrack, and they're really excited. They're going to send out the lap car to escort the students down Story Street. They're going to give all the families 4 tickets to the races this summer. So that's kind of a fun add-on that the racetrack has done. They've been fantastic in working with them, and really excited for them to do the victory lap. Victor will be up on giving the checkered flag, and then KWBG will be playing Pop and Circumstance, different versions of Pop and Circumstance, as well as some memories of the students, as well as some graduation songs. That'll run from about 4:15 till 5 o'clock. And then they're going to live stream the graduation ceremony on KWBG also from our YouTube Boone TV channel. And then afterwards, Fairway has donated a picnic, basically a take and go, grab and go type of picnic for the seniors and their families, and they can grab that and go. The Booster Club will be cooking all that, so a lot of different entities involved, and it's a pretty exciting time. I know that there's been a lot of just anxiety with not having their graduation and things like that, and I know from a lot of the other Raccoon River Conference principals that it's a sense of relief once it's done. So excited that looks like it's going to be a beautiful evening, and we'll be able to celebrate it with our seniors.
Just one correction I would make. Futures has moved their graduation from noon to 1 o'clock, so Futures will be at 1 o'clock at Futures Alternative School. So correcting that. You're muted, Brian.
Sorry about that. I had some dogs who wanted to talk here for a minute here. Anyway, what I was going to ask is that, are we going to meet someplace else over by the football field then beforehand, or are we just going to each wander up to the stage whenever we get there?
I think we're just going to wander up to the stage because we're not doing a true processional into the stadium. We ask that everybody's going to be seated at 5 o'clock, and we'll get started at 5 o'clock.
Okay, fine. Sounds good. Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for all the hard work you've done on this graduation event under some trying times. Dr. Menard, anything else you have to talk to us about tonight? Up, you're muted now.
No, we have a lot of work to do on the return to learn plan and through June and July and now some equity things that we certainly need to spend some time on. So we'll have a lot to do in the next 2 months.
Okay, that sounds good. Anything else for the good of the order? Or else I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I wondered if there'd been any discussion or heard anything from the state on potential funding cuts next year. Has there been any rumors or anything released on what funding could look like next year for us?
We haven't heard anything about that.
I haven't heard anything.
Just curious.
Just that the state is looking at 8% decrease, and 8% for us is 2 million. So that's kind of that's in the back of my mind.
Okay.
I do apologize for my confusion on the job description and not finding the right one, but thank you.
Well, and I apologize for putting the wrong one in the wrong place and having it there to confuse you.
I just missed that link at the top. All right, sorry about that.
I could see both of them, but we didn't have any common screen to share. I was about ready to share my screen to show the difference, but Joy did a good job of guiding everyone through that. Appreciate that. So, okay, if I do not hear anything else, is there a motion for adjournment?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Pritchard and Mrs. Stephen, they want to adjourn this meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming on board tonight. Have a good evening.
See you all next Saturday.
Yep.
Yep.
See you Saturday evening.
Hope.